Hello and welcome to The Voice of Business, the official podcast of the Gwinnett Chamber of Commerce, presented by Gwinnett Magazine. I'm your host, Nick Messino, the President and CEO of the Gwinnett Chamber, and we are broadcasting from the Gas South Convention Center in Duluth, Georgia. At the Gwinnett Chamber, our mission is to champion business, and by serving over 2,000 members, we have become the leading advocate and innovative resource for businesses to connect and thrive. Darice, Rick, it's so good to see you. Thank you so much for joining us today. The new year is around the corner, and you guys are experts in leadership, and I look forward to learning a lot today. But let's start off with telling the audience a little bit about yourself. If you want to go first, Darice.
Absolutely. My name is Darice Irby. I am the owner and executive coach at Thriving Partners LLC. I work with businesses and organizations to streamline their people and processes with their strategy. And how I do it depends on pain points that exist throughout the company, whether it be strategic planning, the day-to-day operations, or leadership development. I work with throughout the organization from the C-suite to the frontline workers so that all can thrive and help moving businesses forward.
Awesome. Personally, where are you from? How long have you lived in Metro Atlanta?
Absolutely. I am from a small town outside of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, by the name of Aliquippa, Pennsylvania. We are known for our great sport of football, and we've actually produced quite a few NFL players that currently play the game and or retired from the game. I served 8 years in the Army after graduating high school, and then I went into education field where I served in just about every role. I served as a teacher, a special education teacher for high school, as a dean of students, principal, executive director for a education management organization, served in the field for 15 years before deciding to go off on my own and launch my own consulting business. And so I'm super happy to continue the work so that I can expand my capacity and expand my reach in helping people solve problems.
Awesome. And you've lived in Metro Atlanta for how long?
Yeah, since 2020. My husband and I moved here from Charlotte, North Carolina.
Had COVID already started?
We moved in the midst of COVID.
Okay, wow.
And that was a very, difficult time for us. Very scary for us to move during that time because that was a time where, everything was truly uncertain.
Oh, sure. In the beginning, we had no idea. It was going to be 2 weeks or what. It was crazy.
Absolutely. But we did it, and it was a successful move, and we have loved our experience here in Gwinnett County and Atlanta since then.
Awesome.
So,
awesome.
Super happy to be here.
Great. Thank you for joining us. Rick Packer.
Hey, Nick.
Hey, man.
Thanks for having me today.
It's our pleasure. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, Christy and I moved here about 22 years ago. Raised our family in Gwinnett County. Have my business here. So, we love the area. And
what is your business?
My business is called Packer Consulting Group. I'm also a principal consultant with the Table Group, and we'll talk more about that as we go along today, I'm sure. But
great.
I have a consulting company, and as of this coming Monday, it'll be my 20th year in having my own consulting firm.
So, awesome.
Yeah, lots to celebrate.
Happy anniversary.
Yeah, thanks.
That's exciting. 20 years. Yeah. That's impressive. Well, we've just established you're both in the consulting space. That's great because we're going to be talking about the new year and new leadership. So with the new year coming up, there are some common leadership lessons that you noticed in the past year. Any trends or challenges that you think leaders should be reflecting on before the new year? Darice, why don't we start with you?
Absolutely. I think that one of the trends that I've noticed that leadership be reflecting on is adaptability. Adaptability is essential for leaders to develop a mindset of change and to invest in professional development opportunities that places them ahead of their competitors. Mm-hmm. With the fast pace of the current technological trends, the current global events, it places leaders in positions where they have to be agile. And leaders that are embracing the mindset of change, leaders that are quick in decision-making thrive, especially in the area of AI innovations. Mm-hmm. As leaders and business owners, we all have an overarching goal of ensuring that our customer experiences the highest quality of service, whether it's a product or professional service that we provide them. And companies are using AI innovations to help them do that, to leverage, their reach with their customers in ways of which they're using chatbots and virtual assistants, chatbots to assist customers, providing 24/7 support as well as recommendations as they shop and navigate their experience with businesses. Businesses are using ChatGPT, and ChatGPT not only streamlined our lives, but it has also changed how we do business. And so businesses are using ChatGPT to streamline communication from the business to the end user, and also marketing strategy, with social media and with digital platforms being one of the key factors of your business success. There's different online digital platforms that are using AI innovations to help assist companies with data analytics, scheduling posts to ensure that there's a cadence there. And so I believe that leaders should ensure that they are learning daily, accessing micro-learning opportunities so that they stay ahead and up on current trends that are going on in our cities.
Your first answer was adaptability, right?
Yes, yes.
And I was doing an employee evaluation today, and this leader is just thrived. And she had some things that happened this year that she had to adjust. And that was in the end of the review. She did very well. She had a great year. It was the adaptability. That's what really narrowed down all of her really amazing decisions. Was she was able to adjust. She's very bright, and she took the information she had in front of her and she made a decision and drove it. And she had a great year because of it. And I probably mentioned adaptability in her review like 10 times to the point where I was like, all right, I'm overdoing this.
I mean, employees who are struggling with adaptability, it's so hard right now because of all the changes going on inside of organizations. And it's like when you are not, as a leader or a member of an organization, adapting to the circumstances around you, it's going to hurt your career because organizations are making investments into AI, and some of that stuff is panning out early and some of it's not. And then you have to make that adoption. And it's like, okay, as an employee, if you struggle with that, then it's going to be really hard to advance your career as well. So it's great to hear that your employee, Nick, is taking that advice well.
Well, she did it without it.
There you go.
Without any advice. She just, that was who she was.
Yeah.
Interesting that you just said something to me that I just remembered. When I was in my 20s, I was in the temporary staffing industry, and I worked for this company. We got bought. It was almost like a roll-up. We got bought, then the firm that bought us got merged, and I worked for 4 different companies in 2 years.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a real big technology adaptation that it mattered because of it was 30 years ago almost. But it was crazy. What I learned was when there's change, there's opportunity. And you didn't really have a choice. You just kind of rolled with it. But then I realized for the rest of my career, if you just have a positive attitude and be like, okay, this is going to be the new paradigm, so let's just lean in. And I've given that advice for 20 years. Sir, same question to you.
So I don't know if it's much of a trend or a challenge, but it's something I've been paying attention to quite a bit this past year. And that is kind of the relationship between executives and middle managers. And kind of the point where it's like executives are frustrated with middle managers relative to their adoption or getting on with change or executing. And so what happens in terms of what I'm seeing from my client base is executives will get around the table, have conversations, and then right when they're ready to make a decision, they'll go off and tell, the middle managers, which is the bulk of employees inside of an organization. Well, at that time, it's too late. And to use like a baseball analogy, I think at a minimum, executives need to be bringing in middle managers, just not in the bottom of the 9th inning, which is what typically happens, right? But rather, bring them in the 2nd inning, bring them in the 5th inning, bring them in the top of the 9th inning. So you're bringing them along with you the entire time that you're having a conversation, whether it's investment in AI, whether it's things on adaptability or new product rollouts or new customer service models. And I think that's critically important because who are the people in the organization that are going to execute and then operationalize what the executives are deciding on? It's the people in the middle. And the frustration typically is, hey, they don't get it, or they're not seeing things from the customer's perspective because they're too far removed. And then the middle managers can also say, hey, the executives don't get it because they're too, whatever it is. So when you bring people with you, and it's one of the lessons of any typical change management or transition management sort of model, and that is leaders have to go meet people where they are and bring them along, as opposed to just accept another iteration of the business case for why we have to do something different.
And change is difficult. And if you weren't involved in creating the change,
you're going to push back.
The principle there is weigh in to buy in. You have to give people the opportunity to weigh in to increase the buy-in.
Right. Well, it's, wow, you're like a consultant. So great. That also made me think about the communication loop, feedback loop. And if you're just doing it at the 11th hour versus along the process and communicating, we follow a model, Rick, you might be aware of, that works really well when you're constantly communicating. You're bringing information back to the leadership team. You can talk about that later.
Well, it's the same thing, though, with board of directors, right? And that is the biggest advice I give to CEOs when you're working with the board of directors is you don't go to the board and ask for approval. Can we get a vote today on this, right? I mean, that's not going to go well. You have to bring the board with you from day one when you're thinking about adjusting your strategy, going after a different market, expanding your marketplace, if you will. Because when you bring the board with you, then you're not waiting for this 11th hour vote so you get the approval to move forward, right? Same advice when it comes to working with the board as well.
Good stuff. Moving on, the new year is all about personal growth and goal setting. I mean, we're all doing that or wrapping it up, hopefully, in the next week or so. How should leaders prioritize their own growth and development, which I think is leaders sometimes forget about themselves. Yes. You can always be sharpening the saw. What are some personal goals and practices that you can help leaders show up to be their best selves every day?
I mean, first thing is you have to take responsibility for your own development, for your own growth, right? So, I mean, a company has programs, they have trainings that you should sign up for and take every available opportunity to sign up for. But you are ultimately responsible for your own growth, right? To be a leader, you got to be a reader. You have to go to conferences. You have to seek out mentors. You need to form an inner circle group of people that are your truth tellers. And when you have those people that are in your life, maybe you need to hire a coach at some point if you want to advance. And, we're probably both in some sort of a coaching relationship with our clients to a certain degree, but you need to find mentors who've been there kind of ahead of you and invest in your growth in that particular way. And then form an inner circle. An inner circle is a group of 5 or 6 people that are your truth tellers. And they tell you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. And that's a big difference. Because everybody has blind spots and you can't see your own blind spots, so you need truth tellers around you to do that. So when it comes to your own personal or professional development, you have to take your own responsibility, start with a mentor, form a group of inner circles, or an inner circle. And the last point I'll make on that is when you think about who those truth tellers are, 5 or 6 people, only 1 or 2 should be from your current place of employment and never your boss. It needs to be people in the community. It could be a former high school basketball coach, could be a pastor, could be another community leader. People that know you so well that they can speak in and you'll hear it. And that's the key thing.
Oh, good stuff. Darice.
Yes, I agree. Also, to piggyback off of what my colleague here said, I always, as a leader and as a coach, encourage to always revisit your why. We as leaders and, the professions that we choose to work in each and every day should align with our core values. And when you're a leader, you're on 24/7. If you want, like the old adage, if you want to find out truly how a person is, put them in a leadership position. Because you have to revisit your core values as you're navigating the complexities each and every day. You have to revisit your core values because that aligns with how you approach the issues, the challenges, the successes that you encounter every day. And sometimes when you are encountering situations that are super challenging and you have to make decisions that may compromise someone's livelihood, if their livelihood is threatened, and or, provide opportunities that perhaps 3 people are, deserving of, but you only have to choose one. And so just recentering yourself with reminding yourself of revisiting your core values, revisiting your why every single day, and just making sure that you operate with integrity every day in alignment with what's best for the company, and then what's best and how you align with your core values. And so I think that showing up and being your best each and every day is understanding why you're there and putting your best foot forward so that you're able to impact lives in a positive way every day.
That's really positive. I love that. I wanted to circle back on a couple of things. One is mentors. I do think, it's huge on social media, the Instagram reels, everyone's suggesting to young people to go get a mentor.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure what our demographics are on the podcast, but let's assume there's a bunch of 20-year-olds listening to the podcast. Thoughts about advice on choosing a mentor? Because I think there's a bit of a pattern of people going to ask basically complete strangers to be their mentor. You have any thoughts, either one of you, on that? I think people need to hear this.
Yeah.
I have a strong opinion about it, but I'm not the expert.
Mentors, I was discussing with a colleague the other day the difference between a mentor and a coach, and just focusing on the mentor side of it. You want to make sure that you are selecting someone that has walked the walk, that has experience in doing the things that you have chosen to do in your career, someone that has a vested interest, in what you're doing. But at the same time, mentors, from a mentor aspect, is eager to mentor mentees that are hungry, because I'm not going to say they don't want to mentor someone that just are always kind of sitting at their feet, just kind of waiting to be fed information all the time. But you want to bring something to the table, and doing your research and reading books and feeding your brain, you're feeding your mind with information so that you're able to bring that value to the table to your mentor to give that person something to work with. So you want to make sure when you're choosing a mentor, someone that has been successful in what you're trying to do, but also you want to make sure that you are continuing, to strive to be the best in what it is that you're choosing to be.
Well, Rick, you actually said it. I love what you just said, but you actually also said that you're responsible for your own development.
That's right.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting reading. I love to read Glassdoor, and a very common is my company doesn't invest in my development. Whose fault is that?
Yeah.
Like, I have never not responded positively to an employee saying, I'd like to do this for my development. In the Gwinnett Chamber of Commerce, we always say, you are responsible for your development. You bring us your plan. We're going to hold you accountable on a quarterly basis to do it, just as a reminder, but you own this. We don't own it.
So my first professional mentor, he was a vendor at the company that I started with out of college.
Okay.
And he was a facilitator, leadership developer, consultant, coach. And I was taking a class of one of his, and after a day or whatever, I'm like, I want to do that. And this guy is incredible. I want to learn from him. And I told him that, and he took me under his wing. And that was almost 35 years ago now, which is crazy to think about. And every time he comes to Atlanta, we get together and we have breakfast to this day. So the relationship is still there. But here's kind of a quick, I'm responsible for my development, but a really good mentor is going to push you outside of your comfort zone. And that is very specifically, and my story on that, his name is Ed. And I was traveling with Ed one day to one of his clients. So I left my company for a half day, went to Ed. I went with Ed to one of his clients, and on the drive, Ed's like, hey, Rick, do you remember in that leadership program we were teaching the 8-step planning process or whatever it was? And I'm like, I think I remember 5 out of the 8 steps, Ed. And he's like, okay, you're teaching that in 5 minutes.
Oh, no. Right? Well, you're never going to know something better than when you have to teach it. Is that what they say?
That's right.
But you can't mess it up. You're supposed to be a pro.
Right.
So literally, this is his client. He's taking a risk on me by putting me up there in front of his client. And I mean, a massive risk for me because I didn't know what I was doing. But he's kind of pushed me, and then he was my safety net in the room. He wasn't going to let it go bad, of course.
Yeah.
But
did you remember all 8?
no, of course not.
So he bailed you out on 3 or 4.
Yeah, he had to.
I'm impressed you rememred 5. That's great.
Thanks.
I don't mean I'd be like, is there an acronym? Give me the acronym so I can remember them. You also said something interesting. A mentor is going to push you. They're going to point out your flaws because we don't always know the broccoli in our teeth, right? No. And that's so helpful when you think we're just imperfect people, and you need somebody to just point it out. Mm-hmm. And the ideal culture is you can have a culture where your coworkers, your leaders, your subordinates will just point it out just to improve everybody. But did you want to add anything else to the mentor discussion?
Yeah, in addition to a human, a physical mentor, if those of you who do not have someone who you've recognized to be your mentor, you can always explore books, read books, and authors, have a really good way of providing those types of services and strategies and models through books. And so finding a book within your profession or that aligns with your interest is a really good way to help mentor or to help see perspective from another professional's lens in the form of text. So that's what I would suggest.
Do you have any? What's your favorite right now?
Oh, wow. Have my list here.
Okay.
Yes.
Just give us one or two.
I can't say my favorite book is 7 Habits of Highly Effective Leaders. I really do like that read because it walks you through the 7 essential steps to ensure that not only you are seeking to understand, to be understood, but you're sharpening your saw. You're doing everything that you need to do in order to be a successful leader. And when I work with people in groups, I always have that book there, with me to help guide some of the conversations, because it always goes back to the basics of core leadership skills. And so I would say that is one of my favorite reads.
That's good.
Yeah.
The term I'm seeking to understand.
Yes.
Versus just asking a bunch of questions. When you start with, hey, I want to learn more about something you just said. I want to seek to understand. That all of a sudden completely
Kind of diffuses.
everything. And Rick knows my wife Suzanne, but my wife does that with me. She was like, I'm going to ask you a question. I just trying to seek to understand. And I immediately like, oh, okay. She just wants to. That's great. She uses it on me all the time. That's great. You've never read any
not
business
one.
books?
Not one. Right? No. I've worked for 2 authors. The reason why we're in Atlanta is we moved from Ohio to Atlanta. I worked for John Maxwell 22 years ago. So John Maxwell.
He's written a couple
He's
books.
written a couple
Yes,
of
he
books.
has.
A couple
In fact,
libraries.
I was listening to a podcast of his on the way down here. He's up to 35 million in books sold now, which is crazy. He's published 60, 70 books. It's
Whatever
it's
the
incredible.
Amazon's highest award is.
Yeah, he's up there.
Yeah, he's maybe like won it twice or something.
But then I've spent the last 20 years working with Pat Lencioni, the author of The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, Death by Meeting, The Motive, The Advantage. So a lot of those books, of course, I highly recommend. And because the work is good. And the reason why I recommend any of those books, in particular The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, we're all on teams, whether it's at work, whether our family is a team, right? And we need to have foundations on how to build those relationships so we can operate towards common goals. And all teams have common goals. And the 5 Dysfunctions, I think why it's such a masterpiece is Pat takes the complexities of developing teams and boils it down to 5 simple things.
I love his books, and I actually was reading his books, I think, before I met you. And then you had given a local community foundation a bunch of books signed by Pat. And I was at a fundraiser. You and I just kind of knew each other. And I got that. I won that in the silent auction. And part of it came from, it was like you were going to do some coaching.
Yeah.
There was like a little certificate of 2 hours of Rick Packer. And we did it. And I was like, oh man, this guy's good. That's that's how I really got to know you better. But what I love about his books is there's always like the story in the beginning.
Yeah, the fable part.
The fable. And he tees up, and then the leader who saves the day. I mean, it's great. I love a character. I love a story. The Advantage, he does not do that, but he's
The only book. The only book out of 12 that is not a fable.
Yeah. But I had read 3 or 4 of them, and so it just made so much sense. But that's a great book. So when you said 7 habits, it made me think of this new tool that my wife's so great. She's like my coach. There's a new app called, I think it's called Blinkit. And I'm 90% sure somebody will correct us online, but I think it's Blinkit. And I was just recently rereading Lean In, which is a fantastic book. I highly recommend actually every man to read it. Sheryl Sandberg wrote this great book on what it is to be a woman in America and in the world and in the workplace. And I was going to have a conversation with some folks about it that were reading the book, and I was like, I should reread it. I didn't have time to reread it. So Suzanne was like, oh, Blinkit. In 2 minutes, goes over the most important parts of each chapter. There's like 8 chapters. Took me 16 minutes, and I got a book review.
That's great. Yeah.
But the thing is, it's not like, you remember the old Cliff Notes?
Oh, yeah.
You're having to read Cliff Notes. This thing reads it to you, and it does a summation. And it says, in general, this is what the book was about. Yeah. And so I had read it. Anyway, Blinkit. You should. It's because 7 Habits is on my list to Blinkit.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's called.
See, and now you don't need commercials on this podcast, right? We just did a commercial for Blinkit. Right?
They're coming on board soon.
Okay.
Yeah, they're coming in big too. Big 6-figure, 7-figure deals coming from Blinkit. They're like, you mispronounced the name.
Okay.
Hey guys, I'm David Greer, and I'm the publisher of the Guide to Gwinnett, and we are so excited this year to be working with the Chamber to produce what we think is going to be the biggest, best, most comprehensive guide to Gwinnett ever. Going to be a lot of pages in there that tout the Chamber's services and basically just a pro-business cheer for all you guys out there working day to day, making Gwinnett what it is. So I invite all of you to step up and advertise. We've got some special deals for Chamber members, exclusive deals, special discounts. Call on us if we can help you. Look forward to having you in this year's Guide to Gwinnett.
Okay, so we're about to start the new year. We're all super busy. You ask anybody, how you doing? I'm busy. What are you working on? They can't tell you, but I'm busy doing stuff. What are some strategies you suggest for leaders in regards to stress management and burnout?
Sure. I would say to set boundaries. We all know and have heard about the old adage of work-life balance. No such thing. You can't really separate the two. You're one person. So I would advise to set boundaries, set time for you, for yourself, in doing something fun, whether you like to work out, read, spend time in nature, but just set boundaries and set time aside that are intentional and used for you to refuel yourself, to recharge. Also, delegate. Delegate responsibility. So when you're in leadership position, you can't do everything. So you want to focus on your strengths and trust your team, understand your team, seek to understand your team and your team's strengths so that you know what to delegate to your team members and they can thrive and expand their capacity as well. And then seek support. I'm part of a couple mastermind groups of fellow consultants, and we meet. I meet with a group once a month. I meet with another group every 2 weeks at 8 o'clock on Wednesdays. And so we meet and we just discuss the challenges and complexities of the work, whether it's through the DISC assessment or whether it's just through trying to experience a breakthrough with a client. And so just co-collaborating with other professionals, within your industry is really good to bounce ideas off of and to support each other.
And that's a great way to use like that inner circle concept I was talking about earlier. When you have that group of people that you meet with on a regular basis, and again, they're your truth tellers, that's where you can bring that stuff. Because when you talk about stress and burnout in the workplace, that may not be the best environment. I mean, sometimes, but not always. But we need to have that group of people that we have that relationship with to like just kind of unload that every once in a while. My thought on stress and burnout, there's kind of a misconception that burnout is about volume of work and just not the nature of work. So there's tons of assessments out there. Like you mentioned DISC, we use Myers-Briggs, we use all the different ones out there. And this is not a plug.
Enneagram, 5 voices.
All these, right?
Yeah.
So not to do a sales pitch for one of our assessments. It's called,
please do, sir.
No, I mean, but for the purpose of helping people with stress and burnout, it's called the 6 Types of Working Genius. And the whole idea around that is it helps people understand what gives them joy, fulfillment, and energy. Because if you think about why we're burnt out, and it's not about the volume, more about the nature of the work, it's like when you're working in your genius, a 15-hour day feels like 5. But when you're not working in your genius and you're working in what we call your area of frustration, a 5-hour day feels like 15, right? And we've all been in environments where 15-hour days doesn't feel like it. But a 5-hour day just feels like you've been there for a whole week already.
30, that 30, that stuff you just don't really like versus the 70. That's the stuff that you love. I could do the 70 stuff all day for
absolutely.
24 hours straight.
Yeah.
But man, you're right. That 30, that stuff that you just like, it's adulting you have to do. I dread it.
Yeah. So again, back to the whole idea of like your working genius. It's like, well, you have to be able to do your job in a way that encompasses the entire way that work gets done. There's 6 types of working geniuses, and what we would say is, well, every job is a 6-letter job. You have to be proficient at a lot of these things, but it's good to know where are you a genius and what causes you frustration. And when you can spend more time in your working genius, you're probably not going to have as much stress and as much burnout. And one more thing I'll add to this too. So if I just think about a couple of clients over the years that are like really stressed and really burnt out, they don't have a good relationship with their boss. There's something about the relationship with their boss that they're really struggling with, whether there's a lack of transparency, whether there's been some history in the relationship, or they just butted heads and they've like really never worked things out. So I mean, I would say for people who have challenges in a relationship there with their boss, that's a bridge that you have to build. And that can be difficult, and we can talk about strategies and how to do that. But it's just kind of a trend I see amongst clients. If someone's like really burnt out and stressed, there's a relationship challenge they have with their boss.
Agreed.
Yeah, lack of trust. I have experienced it, and I hope that my employees are not experiencing it. But I think transparency is really important. I did want to circle back on something you had said, Darice, about you have this group. First of all, I found that fascinating that there's a group of consultants, and I think that's super cool. And that's how you all are sharpening your saws and learning best practices from each other. And I wanted to share personally, I'm a member of an international peer group of chamber CEOs, and it's part of our association called the Association of Chamber of Commerce Executives. And I attended my first meeting, and in my first meeting, one of the staff members said, "Oh, you're in the major cities peer group." And I was like, "What is that?" And they're like, "Well, it's based on the size of your market and your revenue." And so I go to the meeting, and they're talking about the stuff that I'm struggling with. Mm-hmm. People are saying things. They've already solved a problem that I've had. I've solved a problem that I've already solved a problem that someone else was talking about. And I was blown away.
Yeah.
And it's interesting in art because you guys in consulting are, maybe in competition with each other. Chambers of commerce are not in competition with each other. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm not in competition with the Cobb Chamber. I mean, we're actually partners and friends. Mm-hmm. And so I just thought it was so amazing. And so there's guys and gals across the United States and Canada that they're on my speed dial. Mm-hmm. And I actually started emailing a group of about 20 of them saying, anybody dealing with this issue, anyone have a sample this way, I don't have to recreate it. And so we just created this forum where and then I found out that our association actually has a whole data bank. So we don't have to recreate the wheel. It's been fantastic. It's actually brought me the most joy of having a group of people that are going through the same struggles as me. And in my community, there's no one I can go to. I'm the only chamber CEO. Yeah, right. And so I have this peer group, and they're dealing with the same stuff. Yeah. It's really cool.
So, think about people who run companies, CEOs like yourself, people who run and own their own businesses like we do. It can be lonely because, finding peers who are going through similar situations that you are, it's like you need to develop those relationships because of what it is you just said. They may have been through what you are going through right now, and maybe you don't, replicate their exact way that they solved it, but they're going to give you something else to think about. Because there are a lot of things that we should all take to our employees, but sometimes you can't take everything, and you want to give it some additional thought. And a peer group's a great way to do it.
Yeah.
Well, and just the comfort in knowing that there's 5 other people that are struggling with the same thing I'm struggling with. It actually it just makes you feel normal.
Yes.
I'm not a failure. Everyone, this is just an issue that we all have to deal with. Yeah. And my gosh, some of my greatest ideas I've just stolen from the group. And you bring them back to Gwinnett and everyone thinks I'm a genius. Yeah. I always give credit where credit's due.
That's right.
But it's pretty awesome. I really enjoyed it. Were you going to share additional comment?
Oh no, you pretty much hit on everything that I was going to say. But it is comforting to know that you're communicating with other professionals that are going through the same thing that you're going through.
It really brings me joy.
Yeah.
And I think twice a year we have an annual conference, and twice a year just our peer group gets together. We're going to somewhere in North Carolina, eastern North Carolina in December. I already booked the flight. Or not in December, I'm sorry, January. But as soon as it came out, I immediately booked the flight. I saved my dates because it's one of the best things for my personal development. Really
I look forward to it. Yeah.
That's great. Well, you're doing it.
Yes,
twice a month.
Yes.
It sounds like. That's awesome. But actually, we've replicated that in Metro Atlanta because now the Cobb Chamber is on my same peer group. I encouraged her to do it. She's so thankful that I suggested it. And now we're doing it at least twice a year. We get all the chamber CEOs together in Atlanta. Our mutual friend, Dave Williams, hosts one of those events at the Metro Atlanta Chamber. It's really great because we're all dealing with the same stuff, just different levels of organizations. Well, for those stepping into leadership roles for the first time, which we all remember those roles and those situations in the upcoming year, any advice that you'd give a new leader so they start off with a great, strong foundation? Any thoughts? And Rick, I'll start with you this time.
Well, I don't think it's anything different than what we already talked about, Nick, and that is find yourself a mentor, right?
Yeah,
I think that's, if you're looking to grow your own leadership, capability, find a mentor. That person, a little bit more advanced perhaps in their career than you are right now. They should not be, I don't think, in your current place of work. I just kind of have a bias for that. They should be somewhere else, perhaps in the same industry is helpful. And then establish that inner circle of people who tell you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. So I don't know that it's anything different than that because that will help, I think, advance your career faster than a lot of other things because, again, you need these truth tellers in your life.
A good point. Good circle back. The new year, new leader.
Absolutely. Piggybacking off of what you said earlier in terms of relationships, relationship building is key. I would say a new leader should enter the position in scheduling one-on-one meetings with key stakeholders throughout the organization just to understand, their perspective of the goings-on, professionally and or personally. That helps you to get to know the person. It helps you to understand the culture, because as you are running those meetings, there's common threads, that are continually popping up during those meetings and kind of taking note, and keeping in the back of your mind as you are navigating your journey. And
Great
also,
advice.
and also listening. I say listening a lot. And as coaches, and mentors, listening is key. Being an effective listener so that you can take it in and understand how to help that person. And so, as you are building those relationships, just listening, to their perspective and understanding, and then you can better support, their needs as you journey on with the company. Also, continuing that cadence. So once you hold those individual meetings the first 30 days, when I was in leadership positions within an organization, I had a cadence of meetings with my leadership team, one-on-one meetings, 30 minutes. Oftentimes, we didn't hold the entire 30 minutes, but the key stakeholders knew there was a standing agenda. I would always ask them, how are you doing? And that further builds the relationship. How are you doing personally? How's your family? Getting to know the names of their kids and their immediate family. How's it going? What are you working on? What are the high leverage projects that you're working on? And then how can I support you in accomplishing the things that you are set to accomplish to move our mission forward? And so anything else outside of those 3 agenda items, I welcome the team to bring it to the meeting because it was important to me to make sure that they were supported in the work that they did every day.
I love what you just said, because when a leader asks their people that questions, what they're conveying is I care.
Yeah,
I care about you. I
absolutely.
care about the project that you're working on. I care about you and your family. And to go back and, to quote John Maxwell, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Absolutely.
And as a leader, when you can convey that, you want to be known as that leader and manager that's different amongst people's careers, because a lot of people don't have leaders like that.
Right.
What you both were describing, which I'm surprised in this podcast, we have not used the word
Authenticity, yeah.
once, but an authentic leader is what that's what you want. And that's not a term I think that was really, it seems to be very popular right now, but it says so much. And if you can, you want to strive to be that, you want to be real. And you described, I think, that very well.
It's being real, it's being transparent, it's being authentic, it's being who you were made to be, and not feeling like you have to go into the work environment and put on a mask that is you're pretending to be somebody that you're not for the purpose of impression. Because when you do that, you're not impressing very many people, because most people can read right through it. So why not just be real and be who you are?
And I think people need to hear that.
Yeah.
Because I know as I had stepped into different leadership roles throughout my career, you don't want to be an imposter. You're not thinking, okay, what does a leader look like? A leader is just the person who you are leading, and just lean into it.
Well, when you're an imposter, you're basically trying to cover up things that you believe other people will find not desirable. But here's the thing, is all of us have strengths and weaknesses, right? And I had a leader do this years ago, and they just said, hey, everyone just talk about openly your top 3 strengths, your top 3 weaknesses. And here's what happened, right? Before everybody kind of talked about their weaknesses, everybody else in the room already knew what they're going to say. Why? Because if you worked with somebody for more than 6 months, you already know it. So if you can admit to it, like, oh, okay, I've always knew that about you, Nick. So now that you've fessed up to it, we can talk about it. And isn't that big of a deal? And vice versa, right?
Yeah.
So if we can just be that level of transparent with each other and authentic, it just opens us up to have like a real conversation. Because when you don't have the real conversation, what ends up happening is then you don't talk about the real work that you're all assigned to do.
Just want to be human. You just want to be human. We still have to do our work. We still have to be professionals, but we're people first. And once you connect with that aspect of people, your staff will bend over backwards in doing what it takes to drive success.
The authentic person shows up, the real person shows up. Yeah. I think that creates some magic. Rick, as you were just talking, I just remembered fall of 2019, I had just gotten promoted to the president, and we had a new leadership team. We had a lot of changes within about 4 months. People left, people retired, and we have all of these younger people got elevated up. And many of us had worked together for 12, 13 years. And Rick sat in a room and he basically scared the hell out of us. He said, we're going to go around the room and everyone's going to say something that is like a great quality. And that teed us up to feel good. And then you're going to say what that person's weakness is. And everyone's like, oh my God, this is over. And we ripped the Band-Aid off, everything that everyone said. We they knew, we knew what their problem was, but we just said it. And it was the tee up. The next day was amazing. Yeah. Everyone, and literally people still refer back to that specific session that teed us up for. And then everything that happened in COVID was literally 4 months later. And we were like we're ready to tackle the world.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, there's going to be COVID and there's going to be something else and things are going to go wrong, but we have each other's backs.
Right.
And man, that was just an incredible tee up.
And you said that perfectly, because on the front end, everyone's like, we're gonna actually write this down and then we're gonna share it. And then the answer is
it was
yes.
horrific.
Yes, we're gonna do that. But
then it was great.
The way you described it, the very next day, right? We came into the office and whatever else you would kind of put to that, but it allowed you to be real with each other, because we just aired all this stuff. And like, it isn't like you tore each other down. You pointed things out, and people pointed things out to you that they saw in your leadership that could use some work. And you already heard that stuff prior to your.
I knew it all. I'd done 360s.
Yeah.
My same 3 things I've been working on for 30 years.
But it allows us to be more real with each other when we can air all that stuff out. There's a lot of stuff that's kind of baked into the confidentiality of 360s that, I think has a lot of cons and some pros to it, but let's just be real with each other, have those conversations out loud versus having to look through a report and wonder who said that about me, or who wrote that into the open comments about me, right? Yeah. Let's just have the conversation right here. It's not going to go crazy. And it didn't go crazy for your team. It had a massive benefit.
Oh, it was huge. It was huge. It was uncomfortable. And I loved how you made us say something nice about everyone first, like warm it up. And then we're going to drop some grenades in the room.
A good quality of a leader is that you get comfortable being uncomfortable, right? Because you have to have hard conversations about hard issues.
That was honestly, I would say in my career, I was very nervous. Was I going to be honest to the other people? Mm-hmm. I tried to be very open to like, please tell me so I can grow and be the best leader for you that I can be. And so I tried to be warm and opening, and man, did they let it go. It was great. but that was the beginning of something really special. Yeah. I know we're running out of time, so just if we can, just any final thoughts?
I would just say for leaders, just to be intentional with your impact. Be intentional. And that pretty much sums up everything that we talked about today. And be intentional in understanding that you're working with people, and connecting with that people aspect first is priceless in contributing to the success of your business and your relationships.
I just would reinforce the stuff we've talked about already, and that is you're responsible for your own development. To be a leader, you have to be a reader, and go find a mentor.
Awesome. Well, I bet we'll put some stuff in the show notes, but why don't you real quickly, do you have a website or an email address? What's the best way to get a hold of you?
Absolutely. My website is www.thrivingpartnersllc.com. And on my website list all of the services that we provide our businesses and organizations.
Yeah, my website was developed like in 2003, and I haven't touched it since, so it's like incredible, Nick. Just Google me, Rick Packer. You'll find me on LinkedIn or the Table Group's website.
The Rick Packer?
No, just Rick Packer. That's great.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I hope you have a lovely holiday and a great new year, and hopefully all of your favorite football teams win your bowl games. We hope.
Go Steelers.
Go Steelers. Absolutely. Well, I really enjoyed this. Thank you so much. It was really fun.
It was
Appreciate
fun.
it.
Thanks,
Yes,
Nick.
thank you.
Thank you for joining us today on The Voice of Business, presented by Gwinnett Magazine. Our episodes are available to enjoy anytime on any of the podcast channels, including Apple Podcast, iHeartRadio, Spotify, or wherever you enjoy your favorite podcasts. You can also find all of our episodes on our website, gwinnettchamber.org. Don't forget to follow us on social @Gwinnett Chamber to see when our next episodes are out.